lot of us would like to see him, jealously would like to see him stick around for a while because he has so much to offer, but certainly a very well-deserved retirement.
Do you want the job?
There will be plenty of time to talk about that. We got weeks and months ahead. We need to focus on getting our session completed now. And again, I think our focus now needs to be on celebrating the legacy of Randy McNally.
If I could ask you about Senate Bill 2205, could you tell us who lobbied you to carry that bill and who authored it?
Well, our legal team authored it. We certainly had input from the Department of Transportation, Department of Environment and Conservation, State Fire Marshal. We had input from the Boring Company, the governor's office. It's an exciting new project, and need to think about what type of a governing board we're going to have moving forward.
Have you been lobbied by the Boring Company or Elon Musk to do this to reduce red tape and to streamline this without lack of transparency from the local level?
Well, I've certainly had no conversations with Mr. Musk. I have had meetings with the Boring Company. I think the bulk of their conversations have, as you know, this process started back in July of last year, maybe even prior to that, but the public announcement about them coming to Nashville was in July of last year, so there have been a lot of conversations with stakeholders.
Should Nashville have more of a role in kind of the advisory capacity of the Boring Company?
Well, if you heard the presentation of the legislation, certainly our local governments will continue to have zoning approval for any surface and above level construction. For now, the prospect is for the tunnel to be under a state-owned facility. The state has jurisdiction over that for now. But, with the bills out there, and we're getting some feedback from local governments, and we'll listen to what they have to say.
A large portion of Metro Council and some of the Davidson County delegation here is against the project. Is there, I guess, why support it if maybe the people who represent that area don't?
Well, we can have differing opinions. I think the vast majority of Middle Tennesseans are very excited about having this private sector funded complement to our infrastructure and transportation system in Middle Tennessee. But again, all feedback is welcome. The bill that creates the governing authority came out of the Commerce Committee. It's headed to the Transportation Committee. From there, it goes to the Government Operations Committee, and of course, it'll be moving through the House as well. So I think there's ample opportunity for anyone who has an interest in that legislation to comment on it. All right, is that good? Thank you.
Thank you.
I saw you, that's why I'm like, it's easier for me. Sorry, man, I caught that light on. It's just so dark. I mean, it looked better to me.
Dang it, Nikki. I know we're a competition, but jeez.
Mine weighs like 200 pounds.
Hopefully it'll stay there.
That's clever. Oh. Just left a little trick on it for you.
Yeah, 3-4.
No, that was fantastic. I could have come out of the restaurant. Oh, the best.
Which you won't wear? Sure. Sure.
Where are you gonna stand?
I was gonna stand over here, but I can stand wherever you need me to. Tell me.
Why don't you keep that with you and I'll
Okay.
just put this in.
Okay, that'll work.
That
And
was
then if they,
plan
yeah,
B.
yeah.
We can do that. Thanks.
But yeah, I learned one. I learned part of it last time, or 2 times ago. The first time was like that. And the one you need a taller tripod. Like the one before that, he was really turning for areas.
I kind of like those, Jerry, I know you have one of those little lights like we have one here, where it's the board gets on the lights.
I've had this one for a while.
And I like them, they're kind of handy. Is it like adjusted up too?
Are they telling him he needs to go faster? It's
Is it very bright?
It can be.
Or like,
It's adjustable.
does it go between outside and inside?
No, it's not exactly this one.
It's just like a 3-2 or something.
It's just, yeah, it's more like a 4-5. It's like somewhere in between.
Yeah, mine's more of an outdoor light. I don't like it. It's that LED,
Yeah.
I mean, it's better than nothing.
Better than the orange light though.
Exactly. Sandra bought one for herself. They said that if we want anything, we have to buy it ourselves.
Doesn't get expensive.
But
You can't get it expensive.
we asked for one, and they don't, well, I work with the equipment. Do what?
I work with the equipment you provide.
Yeah, they won't buy them for these. Because they don't have ways.
Yeah, I know. We're trying to do the process too.
Yeah, well, y'all get,
Nothing's set in stone, but we're working on it.
they're supposed to get us, I think Mine's always came in 2008.
I've had this since 14.
I'll take a
Yeah,
picture.
but mine, yeah, but.
Yeah,
I did, yes.
Y'all can lose me.
Trust me, I miss having the old big P2 cards for CPS crowd. Those things were built like tanks. Those SD cards are pretty flimsy. I break them every week. Go through them like fire.
But you know, this PC car has a little chip cartridge, you can pull it out. Those are the hands.
Yeah.
Exactly, use it the old way, or recorder those needs.
Like I said, I wish we don't get it. Make the best of whatever comes out of it.
That, or if there's a lot of crying going. There's not much crying going up here.
There's all you guys.
Maybe some wine, no crying.
All that weird.
Mind if I put it on top of your mic, man?
That's what I was.
Shit, all right.
Hi guys. How are y'all?
Nice suit. Right? Wife picked it up.
See, how'd
Comes
you?
as a shocker to
Now,
nobody.
now, why did you think I meant you?
We all know how to dress. We're told how to dress.
So you gravitated farther.
Farther, not further. So I mean, I don't matter degrees. So it just worked out. Okay, I'm talking to the ladies over here.
I don't see her.
One of the mics went down, I don't know how, I think yours is on, one of the mics is saying it's off.
I am.
It's technology. There's a decent chance I've broken it at some juncture.
Representative, I heard you brought your kayak to the Capitol.
We had a
Actually, I'm all tired. We had a coffee dinner on Monday. My wife.
We had a coffee dinner this week.
And she's scared to go by herself.
Yeah.
So we had a double kayak. Oh, nice. Who knows how expensive that is?
Get the same answer.
There's a dude on, I look on Facebook Marketplace, dude on Percy Creek Lake.
Yeah.
He had
We had a contract.
$50,000 kayak.
So-
So dude, for $300.
Just a minute. All right.
Comes with towels and everything. And it's nice.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to. This guy's leaving without telling me this guy's leaving.
Now, you just
glad
bring us
somebody's
to stairs
just
down
letting
the
us-
stairs.
Let me know you're. The problem with using the stairs is straight.
No, it's not green.
You want to switch?
No, it's green.
Is it green?
It is, it's on. All right, leader.
Before we begin today, I just want us to, for a moment, focus on the fact that Dustin Pettigo, a member of our family here in the state of Tennessee, a dedicated law enforcement officer that had only been with the Department of Corrections for about a year, was killed by an inmate this week. We are looking into all the circumstances surrounding that, but at the core of this, there was a very evil individual that was there to get help and to keep our community safe from this monster that killed Mr. Pettigo. Our prayers are with his wife and with all of our correctional officers as they mourn the loss of one of their own. So I just wanted to start out today by remembering him and remembering Dustin Pettigo's name.
May we ask which institution, sir?
Yeah, it's Morgan County
County.
Correctional Institution. And I will tell you, we have institutions that we have looked at some staffing issues where we, suffer from some understaffing problems. We have institutions where there are activities within those institutions that we're trying to improve, that have a high amount of crime. This was an institution that does not suffer from many of those factors. This came out of nowhere. And so this was one individual that chose to take advantage of a momentary circumstance and kill a correction officer. And it's up to the district attorney in that area on whether or not to seek the death penalty, but I certainly hope that he does. That will be up to that district attorney and a grand jury and eventually a jury of his peers in that county. But I cannot imagine a crime much more heinous.
Melissa?
There's been some concerns raised by higher education officials about kind of the health of lottery revenues, what it could do to some of those higher ed programs, and then also downstream, I know sort of some of the funding for the K through 12 construction fund. Do you have any concerns about that? Any thoughts or changes you might make this year, or solutions to reduce revenue there?
Well, I mean, I think that when you look at the lottery fund, there's many things playing a factor into it. I think sports betting is one of those as well. I think that, as we're looking at how to use the HOPE scholarship, I think there needs to be conversations also surrounding sort of what President Trump did and talking about certain degrees and stuff, and maybe prioritizing degrees in the HOPE scholarship first for things that were needed, whether it's engineering, whether it's teaching, whether it's this, and prioritizing those degrees, which may help. Also, we've been talking with higher education as well about what programs can we move from a 4-year to a 3-year degree program, which would really help the HOPE scholarship at that level too. So yes, there are conversations going on about how to be more efficient and more effective and making sure we're focusing on the degrees we need, also focusing that can we do something in 3 years instead of 4 years. As we move forward on the construction funds, we have, as I said last week, that's part of our conversation with something we're working on. We should have something for you later today, I think. But that's included in what we're looking for.
Although it's based, the lottery funds were based on projections from obviously several months ago where they anticipated this year we would kind of see a flat amount of growth and that next year you would start to see a cave off. It actually has grown more than expectations for this year. And I think what that does, it gives us another year to do exactly what the speaker is saying and have these conversations. The lottery fund was never going to grow forever. It was always going to plateau at some juncture. We are now seeing that plateau. That's not a bad thing. It will force us to have a conversation that we've been preparing for years to say, are there certain degrees that we should help out more than others? Should we do what some other states have done with different lottery programs where it is a merit-based system? I mean, right now we take a very wide approach to try to get scholarships to as many students as possible. Do we try to keep our best and brightest here in Tennessee by going to more of a merit-based system? I will admit this is a very personal conversation for me because my daughter is a junior in high school right now, and by the time any of these changes go in, I can assure you it probably affects her graduating class. And so I think this year we've got a time to just kind of prepare for it, but by next year, we'll need to have some sort of a solution on it.
So there may not be changes to the HOPE scholarship this year, but it's something you're talking about for next year, or there will be.
I mean, we're still early enough in the session, you never know, but I mean, I think a lot of it's preparatory this year.
I mean, I think the only thing I've seen on the lottery part is maybe a change of the makeup of the board, I think, is out there. Not that really answers your question. That's the only thing I've seen so far. But it does beg bigger questions, but it also fits in with what we're talking about, an accelerated specialized teacher program that's a 2-year thing. Then you can go to a bachelor's degree after that, trying to figure out how we can get more workers into the workforce quicker. A 4-year college degree 20 years ago, okay. Today, when we approach higher education institutions, they're like, oh yeah, well this degree, we can get 3 here, we can do 3-year here, and your question is, well, why are we not doing that right now, right? So it's a bigger question that we can answer, but I think it's a lot of different levers per se that we can pursue. I think we're still in discussions.
Vivian.
You mentioned the tragic death of Officer Pettigo. I wanted to ask,
disproportionate amount. CoreCivic houses about 39% of state inmates, but that accounts for more than 50% of the state inmates' deaths. What are you doing to hold CoreCivic accountable? Obviously, the state has charged them damages for contract violations over those years. What are you doing to make sure that prison inmates are actually kept safe in these facilities at the same standards as state-run prisons?
Yeah, it's the exact same standards as state facilities, and unfortunately, over the years, there have been decisions made within TDOC prior to this commissioner where there were far too many violent inmates that were moved into CoreCivic facilities. We've evaluated that, and even as recently as just a few months ago, there were some changes made. There's no one prison that should have a higher number of violent felons that are in those prisons than others unless it is a maximum security prison. And as prisoners spend more time in the prison system, sometimes they are moved around depending upon what their risk needs assessment says. So we're looking at the entire prison system. I know you could focus on just 3 of the prisons, but we focus on all of them, and to make sure that those inmates are safe while they're there. This week, obviously, it is heavy on our heart, and we are focused like a laser beam on making sure that our correctional officers are safe, because one's life has been taken, but whether it is a prisoner who's been killed or a corrections officer, that is always a tragic loss of life. But we look at all of our prisons, not just the CoreCivic prisons. I will tell you there's a lot of attention that's given to those prisons. It's easy to just focus on those. We look at every single prison we have to try to improve safety.
Look, I think that you mentioned in your last line about keeping inmates safe, right? Which I think is a interesting line at the end, because we also need to keep the correctional officers safe. We need to keep the other people safe. But the inmates need to exhibit behavior that they want to be kept safe. And when we looked at the oversight board that we put in place and how many hours they had to revoke of early release due to their actions, a lot of what's instigated inside those prisons are from the inmates. And so there needs to be a part of where inmates need to act differently in there. And that's what we hope the oversight board does, because you don't get out earlier with bad behavior. That's ridiculous to the state to have allowed that to happen, and Department of Corrections allowed that to happen. Look, as far as overdose deaths and weaponry and alcohol and all those things, the question always remains, how do they get in the prison? Right? And so you have to figure out how those things are getting in. A lot of times they're coming through correctional officers, unfortunately. So you need to prosecute those individuals who are bringing them in. A lot of times it could be brought in potentially from work release programs or working outside the prison on road pickup and that sort of stuff. You know, I don't know if they're flying drones over and dropping stuff in. But the problem is, the first question, I get we want to focus on the overdose, but you need to focus on why are those things getting in there. And you got to stop that pipeline. It's the same thing with drugs coming into the country. We can sit here and argue about all these people who are dying on our streets, but if you stop the supply, it will limit that ramification. So we can continue to look at how many inmates pass away from it and so forth. There's also inmates who beat up each other. There's inmates who spit and do other things on correctional officers. All that behavior needs to be held accountable, but we need to figure out how to stop the supply coming in, and that will stop the inmates.
It's been several months now since the lower court ruled on the intent to carry gun law. Intent to go armed, I think, is what it actually is. There's some legislation floating around now. I'm not sure anything has really come up for a committee hearing yet, but with that court ruling in place but put on hold by an appellate court, do you all feel like there needs to be some sort of wholesale larger change to firearms regulation, or are you going to hopefully potentially wait for an appellate ruling?
Representative Todd has a bill on that. I think it's on notice for next week. I'm a co-sponsor of that, to try to just, every chance we get down here, we're going to improve freedom in this state. We've done it over and over and over again by passing constitutional carry, by expanding civil liberties. It doesn't matter if it's the first, second, fourth, or any of the rest of the amendments. We're going to continue to expand freedom here while at the same time focusing on safety. You don't have to pick between those two in Tennessee. You can be safe and you can be free. And so that bill, I know, will go through a very rigorous committee process to ensure that we get that right, but it is a full rewrite of that statute.
You know, I think if you look at the statute, we're going to work with the AG and continue to work with what the courts say to have a better understanding. I think the way it's currently written in the state is upside down, backwards, however you want to word it, simply because it says you can't go armed. Wait a minute. Yeah, except for these things, and it should be you can go armed except for these, and so it's a backwards way to think about it, which makes it very convoluted and complicated. But the problem is when you're working through legislation or this piece of legislation, there's certain things like you need to have the conversations like, should someone who's been charged with domestic violence be able to, right? And so those are the conversations you have to have, and it's better to have them saying that the intent is you can, but here's the things that you can't. And I think that's a better understanding, and I think that's what is potentially being tried to be done, but it requires different conversations about what those things are that would be taken away.
Andy?
Governor McNally made it official today that he's not seeking re-election either as Speaker or to the Senate. A, your reaction to that, and B, what do you think about Jack Johnson and
I don't have a vote.
Paul?
We're not in the Senate, Andy.
Well, but you might be working with it.
Well, we'll work with whoever the Senate chooses. That's the way it should go, right? And
So you don't have any particular preference whether it's Jack Johnson?
I'm not getting involved in Senate politics, I can tell you that. But look, he's been a great statesman for our state. He's done a lot of great things. He's left a long legacy of success and things and standing strong for Tennesseans. And, I appreciate his service. So,
By the way, I'm going to say he started this gig in the House when I was 1 year old. We have a good number of our caucus members who were not born when Randy McNally first began serving the state of Tennessee. So he will certainly be missed. I think the Speaker even worked on a few of his campaigns over the years. So, I mean, it's just, he has been an icon here at the State House, both in House and Senate, and is going to be surely missed. But, I mean, he's just, he's one of a kind. I hope a lot of y'all sit down and listen to some of his stories before he's out the door, because my word, when a man wore a wire for the FBI to, for what, 3 years, Speaker? I mean, it was years that he wore a wire to try to uncover wrongdoing here at the Capitol years ago. It's just, he's a one-of-a-kind guy.
I'll add something to that. Over the last 6 years, I've had the privilege of, when you're in leadership, you eat breakfast in the governor's office on Wednesday morning, and it just so happened that I ended up sitting beside him. So he and I sat together for the last 6 years. And unless you have some of those more quiet times with him, you don't know the sense of humor he's got. And I would encourage any of you reporters to try to get away just from everything and do some stories. And the humor he has is unbelievable, and the stories and the knowledge that he had. He's a true Tennessee statesman. And the thing that I admired about him is he's obviously incredibly important in state government, but he's also incredibly humble. He's led with humility, and to see a man make it to the lieutenant governor and still be humble and accessible and funny and entertaining, that's admirable. He's been history will remember him as being a huge benefit to the state of Tennessee.
Julianne?
Hi, Representative Boyd is sponsoring the bill trying to create.
I'm sorry, I can't hardly hear you.
Sorry, Representative Boyd is sponsoring the bill trying to create a family advisory board for families with people incarcerated in Tennessee prisons. I'm curious what you guys think about that, and if you think that'll be helpful.
In concept, I'm fine with the bill. I mean, I know that our Majority Whip, Clark Boyd, has worked on that for a while. I sat down with some of the families. I think they just want a bigger voice, and I believe that involves some appointments by both speakers and the governor. I'll be interested to see what that looks like as it comes through the committee process, so I don't know if it's in its final form or not. But in concept, I think just based on some of the other conversations we're having, family members of prisoners go through a really tough time. I mean, they many times feel a lot of guilt for the decisions that a family member has made and the crimes that they've committed. All these folks are convicted criminals. They're not alleged to have committed crimes. They've been convicted. But yet those family members still love their son, their daughter, their spouse. I mean, they want them to be safe. They want them to do better. They don't want them to commit more crimes. And so having those families involved in the system is important, but you also obviously have to have very strict security and protocols there to ensure that there's, as the Speaker said, no prisoners or correctional staff that are endangered by having family members who obviously love the folks that are in those prisons and care for them deeply, to make sure that there's nothing that gets in the way of safety. And so just navigating through that, I think through the committee process, they'll do it fine.
I haven't read the bill. Anything to promote families is good. just to be honest with you, two parent families, we should look at all of our expenses through social services and all that, and it should be designed for people to want to be a two-parent family and not be a single-parent family. That's what we should do. We hope to get there for a much bigger picture. But anything you can do to support the families, keep them intact, and sometimes the person just made a terrible decision that there's a consequence for, and so trying to keep the family unit intact until that time's over is very beneficial long-term, not only for that person, but also for their family and the kids, and hopefully it works out.
517.
Representative Fritz is sponsoring a bill that would require municipalities to seek approval from the county to annex a certain part of their city. Do you guys think that'd be good to help manage the growth of certain counties?
Well, I carried it 3 years ago, so I mean, it's the exact same bill I carried 3 years ago to see that the county, the city, and a willing landowner all have a seat at the table on managing growth within any area. We passed it through the subcommittee and the full committee in the House. It was not able to go forward in the Senate. It just didn't have the support there. I have no idea whether it has the support this time around or not. But anytime you're talking about growth and you're talking about cities, we've banned forced annexation. We've tried everything we can at the state level to put in reasonable growth boundaries. But we don't need the state of Tennessee to be, pavement and sidewalks and buildings from Mountain City to Memphis. I mean, it's a beautiful state. Go to Chairman Fason's district anytime you want. Go hiking with him. He's walking through the hills of East Tennessee all the time. We want to preserve that heritage and preserve the agricultural, really both history and current importance of our state. And so managing that is important and critical to our success. But it's also difficult because when you have a willing landowner that wants to be annexed into the city and the city is willing to take that land in, obviously that process is probably going to happen. But then the county is the one that's responsible for building the jail and paving the roads out in the county and funding the schools along with state funds. So it's a difficult bill to try to get to. Again, I tried 3 years ago to get it. I still support it. We'll see if it goes anywhere this year.
I don't know. I mean, look, late Representative Carter did a lot of work in that area. It seems it's eased up in that regard. You don't see as many fights. It doesn't seem like you see as many fights now on annexation. It'll be interesting to see what the committee does. I'm not following that piece of legislation per se, but we do have growth boundaries, and the county does have those, and the city have those, and they look at them and they understand them. There's certain requirements within how they put in the growth boundaries. But I think another bigger issue as you're looking is outside of that piece of legislation is the utility annexations and how they can annex parts, which is a whole different battle outside of their municipal or geographical area. And we're taking a very hard look at that this year.
Tori. Good morning. Have you all had any other talks with ICE about a facility coming to another part of Tennessee, possibly near Gallatin or Trousdale, Macon counties?
I mean, they're not going to call and talk to us and get our approval, whether or not we've heard or talked or heard rumors, speculation, or conversations, but it's totally up to them. And so I'm not going to talk about any of those conversations if I've had or haven't had them. But if they're wanting to come to the state of Tennessee, that's fine. Look, I understand, when we try to build a new prison, and people are like, well, we need a new prison, but I don't want it in my backyard. That's usually the sentiment, and it has to go somewhere. So, we'll see what the federal government decides that they want to do.
I wanted to ask about TWRA funding. Over the summer, the agency wasn't allowed to raise license fees. Now the agency is saying they'd love to have some dedicated funding to be able to do their job, but you all have talked about how tight of a budget year this is. Is this something that could happen this year?
I mean, I think it could happen very well. I mean, I think, look, that we've had conversations with the governor and the Senate and with TWRA. Right now TWRA is self-sufficient based off their fee schedule for the most part. And so when you're having to use your fees to take on new roles and new capabilities throughout our state, that comes with more cost, right? And so the fees are high because of that reason, right? So there's a conversation being had about, can we reduce fees, right? And then do what other states have done, which is put in some general funding, recurring money that would go to them to keep our fees low for hunting, fishing, and everything else, but then would give them the capability to be able to be less dependent upon fees, which is a great thing. But that's also why we have higher fees, and other states don't have it that way, and it's kind of putting us out of balance with surrounding states as well.
Chris, go ahead.
I was part of what took place in GovOps and kind of negotiate that, and I'll tell you why. All of the TWRA is held on the backs of hunters and fishers. And I contend, and they will tell you, that the state and the federal government have straddled them with responsibilities that have nothing to do with hunting and fishing. And so I maintain that that should be paid for by a different avenue. I've personally spoken with the governor and his staff and finance saying, hey, let's don't put that straddle hunters and fishers paying for something that they have nothing to do with. So I've been told, and Signal, and I think by y'all have too, there's something coming from the administration. If it doesn't come from the administration, we will, in the House and the Senate, also be looking forward, because they add a benefit to our state, and they bring an unbelievable amount of revenue, tax revenue, from hunters and fishers coming from all over. We need the TWRA to be successful, and if our laws or federal laws have straddled them in a way that they can't survive, then we need to step up and make sure we're giving them what they need.
Well, Chris, you know, it's about the only hobby I have is hunting, so every time I get a chance to get in the woods, I go. And when my father was younger, he talks about the times when they could hunt an entire deer season and never see a deer. I harvested 7 deer there in the freezer that are feeding my family this year. And
He should share some of that.
Well, I should. And it was rare that I went into the woods and didn't see deer. I mean, and that is an important thing. Turkeys were reintroduced, and that, you know, in flocks now are massive. I mean, I had on trail cam yesterday. There was about 30 turkeys in one flock. And I mean, it's working. What TWRA does is so important to the management of any type of game animal here and fish. Now, in the budget, there's $10 million of non-recurring funds that should go to TWRA. That's to help patch some of that hole that Chairman Facey was talking about. And then for all of our National Guardsmen that are serving so hard to try to protect this state, to try to serve anywhere they're needed, they would get a lifetime sportsman license. That's $2.5 million of recurring funds that would come from the general fund into TWRA. And then I know there are additional conversations being made, just like Chairman Facey said, of, okay, what responsibilities, and I know the Speaker has looked at this as well, what responsibilities do they have? Does that fit best under TWRA, under TDEC, under Ag? I mean, just make sure that all of these areas that are out there, be it wildlife management areas or anything else, are serving you well as a Tennessean, while at the same time making sure hunters and fishermen are not paying for really recreation, which is what's happening right now.
Definitely not TDEC, though.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, amendment added to House Bill 2450 would create a new state agency, the Subterranean Infrastructure Coordination Authority. Say that 3 times fast.
I can't.
That would, in some people's concerns, sidestep needed regulation for boring companies. Tunnel. Your office, Speaker of the Senate, the governor's office would all get to appoint commissioners to that. Do you support that legislation, or would you like to see that regulation kept in agencies that have the knowledge of the needed oversight and not remove some of that authority to local governments?
Well, I mean, I think the state has knowledge into that as well through TDOT and other avenues. So I think our experience is probably we have more knowledge than the locals do, I would say. Look, I think it's needed. I'm supportive of the legislation. I think if you're asking, it's dealing with the right-of-ways and that sort of stuff and what that looks like. But there's a need there. There's a need there that we never thought we had a possibility to do something that now we do. There's an article today, I think the first 2.5 feet have been started digging on Boring Company. All of a sudden what we found out through the soil samples is Tennessee's soil is prime. We're always arguing about the limestone and the different stone, but when you find out when you get under that shelf, it is pristine for tunneling. And so the Boring Company was very enthusiastic about what that looks like. It does solve a lot of some of our congestion and transportation problems. So I'm in favor of that legislation.
Hey, Stacey, let me say this. I'll go one step further. And I think most of us in the Republican caucus are fully in favor of a company coming in using literally space age technology to build a free mass transit tunnel. And I'm old enough to remember when Democrats were still in favor of mass transit. This one's not going to cost the people of Tennessee a dime. And yet, this tunnel could be built in months instead of years or decades. So this is a game changer, not just for our state, but throughout the entire country and world, to be able to take transportation 3D. Instead of just a 2-dimensional road, to genuinely be able to tunnel under, just as the Speaker was saying, into what is apparently a very ripe area for this. I support the Boring Company's ability to be able to do this, and I don't want it to take years. I want it to take months. I want these tunnels open as soon as possible so that that first one can prove that it absolutely works in the type of soil and rock that we have in the South. And that not just for Nashville, not just for Tennessee, but that can then actually be a new way that people move throughout the country. And I appreciate the Boring Company coming in and leveraging their own resources to do this instead of trying to get hundreds of millions of dollars through the state or through private other investors to do it. I appreciate the company doing it. I bet if you ask the Democratic caucus, they dislike it because it has Elon Musk associated with it, which is the craziest thing in the world to dislike a tunnel that's going to move Tennesseans efficiently.
But the first of its kind technology through this type of new rock, new soil, aren't you a little concerned that it's going to move at such a rapid speed that maybe we're not doing the oversight or regulatory look that we should?
I don't think so. I mean, I think there's a lot of pre-planning, and that roads are the same way. There's before you ever start building a road, there's a lot of. So they went through the permitting process. They went through all those processes, and they did their own studies and so forth, and turned them in for that. Look, I would say as you're looking at our transportation issues, I think in the past, what we've learned in the past, and I'm talking 40 years ago, politics got in the way of it. Politics should not get in the way of infrastructure, to be honest with you. And so the decisions we're having to make today are because politics got in the way of 840 North, and we only got 840 South. Politics got in the way in Knox County of the blue and orange route back in the day. We don't have that as a bypass. The lessons that we learn is, yes, sometimes you're going to have to make hard decisions, but we're looking 20, 30 years from now, and you can't allow politics to enter into that decision. You look at the facts, you look at what needs to be done. If it's a Republican building or a Democrat building, it really doesn't matter. Can they be built? Can it be built? Can we get it done? Can we achieve it? Will it handle the issue? That's what we're looking at. Some people are wanting to make it about politics. It's not about politics on our side. It's about relieving congestion, helping with Tennesseans to get around, reducing accidents and risk on our highways by reducing traffic, giving another mechanism. And so we're looking at it from a totally different standpoint than what maybe right now Davidson County is looking at because of politics.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks. Y'all have a great weekend.
Enjoy your weekend.
Are you doing a